At the top of the program, we laid out the administration's rewriting of what the president said last night about taking over Gaza and remaking it as a Riviera of the Middle East, his words. Regardless of what the people around him say he said it all on camera, and millions of people saw it, including Arab Americans, many of whom voted for him. More from CNN's Jason Carroll now in Dearborn, Michigan.
Days before the last presidential election, Donald Trump was the invited guest at the Great Commoner restaurant in Dearborn, Michigan. Albert Abbas says he extended that invitation, a decision he is now reflecting on, given all that has happened in the last 24 hours.
Many in the community are at a loss for words. Last night was a very rough night for most of us.
Abbas is Arab American and one of a number of Democrats who voted for Trump. Abbas says he hoped Trump would do more than President Joe Biden did to help Palestinians suffering in Gaza.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip.
But after Trump said Palestinians should leave Gaza so it can be redeveloped, Abbas says not only does he feel betrayed, he's hearing from a number of people angered over his past support of Trump.
People were really, really frustrated, and I don't think there's anyone to blame. At the end of the day, as Arab Americans or Muslims, we really didn't have much of a choice.
Dearborn, a Detroit suburb, is home to the largest Arab American population in the United States, a community which helped Trump carry the critical swing state. He won 42% of the vote in Dearborn versus Vice President Harris with 36% and Jill Stein with 18%. In 2020, Biden handily carried the city with 69%. Faye Nimmer voted for Trump in 2024 out of frustration over the previous administration's support of Israel. Now, she is troubled by the president's proposal to move Palestinians out of Gaza.
I mean, it's very concerning and it's infuriating.
Personal feelings, you're infuriated, but standing by your decision for now to have voted for Trump.
Correct.
And what would move that needle for you to say, you know what, I made a mistake?
Palestine is the red line for this community.
Nimmer says she suspects Trump is bluffing and is using his proposal as some sort of negotiating tactic. That's the same sentiment shared by Amar Zar.
First, this is clearly not going to happen, right?
And real estate broker Ali Al-Farajala.
A lot of people are calling me and texting me saying, hey, how did your vote work out? How was that third party vote?
Both were so-called protest voters. Neither supported Trump or Harris. Are there any sort of second thoughts now about having supported a third-party candidate?
Absolutely not. And I'll still do it again and again and again.
I didn't vote for Trump. So a protest vote, I don't know. I would say it was a targeted vote of conscience to say that the children of Gaza have to mean something. Their death has to mean something.
And while Arab Americans here were divided in the past, going forward, one point is uniting them: opposition to Trump's proposal to move Palestinians out of Gaza.
The community will be unified. I will tell you this. The Palestinian people would rather die and live in a demolition site than to be ethnically cleansed and being sent out of Gaza to Egypt or Jordan.
So again, Anderson, after spending some time here in the Arab American community, you really get a sense that they feel like they've been let down by both Republicans and Democrats. Certainly there's a great deal of frustration after hearing what Trump is proposing, but there's also a feeling that had Harris been elected, had it been a Harris administration, the feeling here is that Palestinians would still be suffering. Anderson?
Just Carol, thanks very much. And Dearborn with me now. Put some numbers to the story. CNN senior data reporter Harry Enton. Generally speaking, has there been much an appetite in the U.S. for to get involved in rebuilding Gaza?
No, there has not been. Look, we have no new polling since last night, right? Polling works fast. It doesn't work that fast. But in the polling that we had prior, or that was taken towards the middle end of last year, what we saw was the overwhelming majority of Americans opposed the idea that the United States should take a lead role in reconstructing Gaza. You could see it right there, 57% opposed, just 37% support. And what I should note is the support was lowest among Trump's own base of Republicans. So the idea that this is going to sell among the American people at large or the Republican base, simply put, he definitely wasn't looking at the polls before he went out there and made a statement that was heard around the world, because of how crazy it sounded to most people.
How did Palestinians view President Trump during his first administration?
Yeah, so we're talking about Americans, right? But at the end of the day, the Gaza Strip is filled with Palestinians, right? So the question is, how did Palestinians feel about Donald Trump during his first term? And the bottom line is they absolutely disapproved of his leadership. I mean, you rarely see numbers like this. Look at this. 78% during his first term disapproved of his leadership. Just 10% approved of it. And I even drilled down a little bit more because I love going into those crosstabs. And what I found was approval, or at least disapproval among Gazans was even higher. The disapproval among Gazans was even higher than it was among Palestinians overall. So simply put, this would not be a popular plan either in America or in the Palestinian territories.
We are finally putting America first. Our policy of never-ending war, regime change, and nation building is being replaced by the clear-eyed pursuit of American interests. We do not seek nation building. We're going to end the era of nation building, a disastrous concept, a disastrous era. Why are we nation building over there? We want a nation build over here.
When President Donald Trump first entered politics nearly a decade ago, he did so with promises of putting an end to nation building and removing the U.S. from foreign entanglements in the Middle East. But now he's, of course, said that he has a new plan to redevelop the Gaza Strip, or as his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, put it, quote, make Gaza beautiful again. Rubio clarifying some of the details of the president's proposal yesterday.
The only thing President Trump has done very generously, in my view, is offer the United States willingness to step in, clear the debris, clean the place up.
As the Israel's defense minister readies its military for the, quote, voluntary departure, end quote, of Palestinians from Gaza, one thing that's clear, President Trump and his plan have the full support of his Israeli counterpart, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
This is the first good idea that I've heard. It's a remarkable idea, and I think it should be really pursued, examined, pursued, and done, because I think it will create a different future for everyone. He's the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House.
All right, joining us now, former Chief of Staff to Benjamin Netanyahu, George Birnbaum. Sir, good morning. Thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Good morning, Casey.
I'd like to start with the meeting itself, and especially the look on the Prime Minister's face there, as well as some reporting that he was as surprised by this as almost anyone. The New York Times wrote this, quote, it wasn't only the Americans who were scrambling after the press conference. The announcement came just as much of a surprise to Mr. Trump's Israeli visitors. Soon before they walked out for their joint news conference on Tuesday, Mr. Trump surprised Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel by telling him he planned to announce the Gaza ownership idea, according to two people briefed on their interactions. You've obviously worked closely with Netanyahu. What did you read into his reaction, and how surprised was he?
Well, I would say this. Netanyahu is a very astute follower of political chess. And we saw a few announcements prior to the prime minister's arrival that were a little strange. One was the announcement that the King of Jordan would be coming to visit the White House in a couple of weeks. And while, with all respect to the King of Jordan, I could think of 24 world leaders that the president would invite to the White House prior to the King of Jordan, we also saw the announcement of a very unique arms sale to Egypt just a day prior to the prime minister arriving. Of course, Egypt and Jordan being two key players in President Trump's plan. So the prime minister may have been surprised that the announcement came so quickly, but I believe that he probably was reading the tea leaves a little bit, and that President Trump did have something in mind by having these two very strange events occur so early into his presidency regarding the invitation of the King of Jordan as well as the arms sale to Egypt.